She handed me a glass of red wine with a smile so perfect it made my skin crawl. 30 minutes later, my sister collapsed, and I realized that drink was meant for me. Hi, I'm Mora, and this is the story of how my own mother tried to control my future in the most unthinkable way. From fake apologies to sabotaged emails, I unraveled a pattern of manipulation so quiet it nearly rewrote my life. Would you still call it family if they tried to erase your voice? Tell me, have you ever trusted someone only to find out they were the reason you almost broke? I'd love to hear your story. It was supposed to be a celebration. Everyone kept saying that, like, if we repeated it enough times, it would drown out the static underneath. The sky had finally cleared after a full day of spring rain, and the Virginia air smelled like lilac and damp bark. The venue sat on a low hill surrounded by rows of sleeping grapevines and strung with soft bulbs that glowed just enough to make everything look expensive. I stepped out of the car, heels wobbling slightly on the gravel. The party was already in motion. Jazz hummed through speakers tucked behind flowering shrubs. The catering tent offered deviled eggs and chilled macaroni salad, set beside tiny signs that read, "Locally sourced." Candles flickered inside hurricane glass, and everything, from the color of the napkins to the gold foil name cards, felt too rehearsed. Eleanor Ridgway, my mother, stood near the center of it all, wearing her favorite lavender wrap dress, perfectly matched to the wine labels. She waved at me like a pageant queen. That wave alone should have told me something. But then again, my whole childhood was built on those kinds of warning signs. Polished, practiced, and always paired with a smile that never reached her eyes. Nathan caught my hand before I could fully step into the crowd. "You look stunning," he whispered, and I smiled, but it didn't quite make it to my chest. He meant it, I think, but his eyes kept drifting, checking the seating chart, his uncle's bourbon, someone's missing cufflink. He had that expression he always wore before a big pitch, somewhere between pride and panic. We moved through the clusters of guests. I recognized a few distant cousins, his law firm partners, my third-grade piano teacher, but none of my closest friends, not even Raina. I checked my phone, half expecting a message saying she'd be late, but found one already there from that morning. "Your mom called. I won't be there, just trust me." It was short, odd, and completely unlike her. Raina didn't cancel on people. She was the one who showed up with takeout and folding chairs when I had the flu during finals week. I frowned at the screen. Earlier that week, I remembered Eleanor casually mentioning that Raina was a bit intense, and maybe it was better to keep things centered on family. I hadn't pushed back. I didn't want another scene. That's how she trained us, not with rules, but with silence. We didn't talk back. We didn't question why. Dinner began late. Someone's toast dragged on, the candles burned low, and I felt a strange fog rolling in behind my ribs. I kept nodding, smiling, refilling people's glasses. But inside, I felt like I was watching it all from behind glass. I was mid-conversation with Nathan's aunt about fondant versus buttercream when Eleanor appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of red wine. "For the bride," she said, offering one with a smile she'd practiced in the mirror for decades. I reached for it, but paused. There was a smell, faint, like something metallic under fruit. Not sour, not off, just wrong. My fingers hesitated around the stem. The weight of the glass in my hand made me feel suddenly pinned, like this moment was heavier than it looked. I could feel people watching, so I smiled. Lila appeared behind me, a little flushed from laughing too hard. "Look at you," she said, nudging my elbow, "all formal and fidgety." I handed her the glass. "Ladies first," I said with a grin that felt borrowed. She rolled her eyes but took it. "Fine, but if I start doing the Macarena later, it's your fault." She took a sip, turned to flirt with someone near the bar, and vanished into the crowd. I don't remember much of the next 30 minutes, only that time moved strangely. I rearranged votives, refilled someone's salad, smiled at a toddler in a bow tie. But my eyes kept finding Eleanor. She floated through the space like a curated fragrance. Light, calculated, omnipresent. Then I heard someone shout, "Lila!" My head whipped toward the bar. She was standing there, arms swaying slightly like the air was too thick. Her mouth opened, trying to form something, but no sound came out. And then she dropped. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Eleanor rushed to her side faster than I thought possible in heels. She knelt beside Lila, pressing a cocktail napkin to her forehead. "She probably didn't eat much today," she said, all breathless concern. "Too much excitement, that's all." But her voice was too steady, too clean. I moved on autopilot, stepping over the mess of overturned glasses and stunned relatives. I reached the drinks table and found the untouched wine glass. Mine. The one I hadn't sipped from. I slid it into my purse. No one saw me do it. No one was watching me. They were all watching Eleanor. She kept patting Lila's cheek, whispering something comforting while the paramedics arrived, and she never stopped smiling. I spent most of the night sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the wine glass. It looked ordinary enough, elegant even. Crystal stem, barely smudged, but every time I brought it close to my face, a trace of something bitter clung to the inside. Not quite chemical, not quite right. The kind of scent you forget how to describe until it's too late to name it. The candles I'd forgotten to blow out finally burned themselves down around 2 in the morning. The house was still, except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of settling wood. I didn't sleep. Not because of the party or the people or the photographs now flooding social media. I didn't sleep because that smell haunted me. And because no matter how many times I replayed the evening, I couldn't explain why I hadn't taken the first sip. At 6:17 a.m., I opened my laptop and typed, "common sedatives in wine." Then, medications that dissolve clear. Then, benzodiazepine smell faint fruity. After the 10th variation, I opened a blank document and titled it, "Incident?" I wrote one sentence. Switched glasses with Lila. She drank. I didn't. Outside, a light rain pattered against the windows. Inside, the apartment felt like a museum of recent events. Stacked engagement gifts, ribbons still curled, a framed photo of Nathan and me leaning against the hallway wall. A lemon-scented candle burned on the counter, trying too hard. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is UVA Medical. Your sister's stable. Dehydration and exhaustion. No immediate concern. No mention of the wine. No toxicology. No reason to question. Except I knew better. I walked over to the counter, lifted the glass one more time, and took a cautious breath. Still there. That sharp undertone, tucked beneath the floral. My phone buzzed again. This time, Raina. "Hey, just seeing this. Your mom told me you needed space. I didn't want to make things worse. Hope the party went okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. Raina never gave space. She filled it. When I texted her before my LSATs, she showed up with flashcards and Thai food. When I cried after Eleanor criticized my college photos, Raina printed them into a book and titled it, "Proof of Self." I typed back, "Did my mom really say that?" The reply came fast. "Yeah, said you were overwhelmed, wanted me to take a step back. I didn't mean to bail." I set the phone down and pressed my palms against the counter. Cold, solid. I walked into the living room where Nathan was curled on the couch, half asleep with his arm over his eyes. I sat beside him quietly. He shifted. "You okay?" "No," I said, voice low, "and I need to ask you something." He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "All right." "Did my mom talk to you? Before the party?" He blinked. "About what?" "About me, about anything." He exhaled. "She wanted to go over logistics, guest list, flowers, that kind of thing." I waited. He looked at the floor. "She also brought up your exes, said she didn't want you making the same mistakes." "She always says that," I said, biting my lip. "What else?" "She offered me money." The words landed like a dropped plate. Not loud, but final. She what? 20,000, he said quietly, to walk away. Said I could do it respectfully, quietly, no drama. I stared at him. And you didn't tell me? He shifted again. I didn't want to upset you. You were already so tense about the party. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him. She said I wasn't good for you, he added, that my background, my past stuff would eventually embarrass you. There was a strange ringing in my ears, not loud, just persistent. I stood. So you thought silence was better? He didn't answer. I need to go, I said. Where? Out. He reached for my arm gently. Mora. I stepped back. I'm not angry, not yet, but I need space. Real space. I grabbed my purse. Wine glass tucked inside a Tupperware now. I drove in silence, no destination in mind, just movement. Eventually, I pulled into a parking lot behind the venue and sat there, engine off, watching the morning fog lift from the vines. Then I called the event manager. Hi, I was the bride from yesterday's party, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Oh yes, lovely gathering. Thanks. Listen, do you have cameras on site, around the prep area or bar? A pause. Yes, but they're primarily for liability, not always high quality. Could I request the footage from, say, 2 hours before the party through the end? We can ask the tech team. Footage is usually stored for 72 hours unless overwritten. Would you like to file a formal request? Yes, I said, please. I hung up and sat there, staring out at the wet grass and the quiet. Birds were starting to chirp. Someone opened a nearby shop door, the chime echoing faintly. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but for the first time in years, I was listening to the part of me that didn't need permission. It wasn't the fall that scared me. It was the way my mother explained it. Calm, rehearsed, like she'd done it before, like she expected it. I hadn't planned on meeting Jaden. His name showed up in my inbox the night after I called the venue. No subject line, just, can we talk? It's about your mother. I almost didn't respond. He was a chapter I'd closed without rereading. We broke up in our junior year. Back then, I thought it was because of distance, miscommunication, the usual, but now I wondered if I'd been handed the wrong ending. The cafe near campus hadn't changed, still smelled like burnt espresso and warm cinnamon. Jaden looked older, not tired, just like someone who had lived through things quietly. We sat by the window, neither of us touching the menus. I saw what happened to your sister, he said. I nodded. She's stable. He hesitated. This isn't easy to bring up, but when I saw the news, it brought things back. I leaned in. What kind of things? He looked at me gently. You thought I cheated, remember? I did. I remembered the photo, a blurry shot of Jaden and a girl outside a bar. The caption was vague, but it came from an anonymous email forwarded by my mother. It wasn't what it looked like, he said. We were in a study group. She had just walked out with me to grab air. That photo was taken by someone who had been following me for 2 days. I blinked. I didn't know at first, he added, but when I got a warning from my residency director about being emotionally unstable, it clicked. They got an anonymous tip about me, said I was draining you, said I had outbursts. I gripped the edge of the table. She did that? He nodded. I didn't want to believe it either, but your mom had a way of painting concern like it was love. There it was again, that quiet corrosion. She even intercepted my letter, he added. I wrote you before graduation. Raina promised she'd hand it to you. I guess it never made it. I remembered. A thick envelope tossed into the trash by Eleanor with a scoff. Just more drama, she'd said. My stomach twisted. I saved copies, he said. Voicemails, screenshots, just in case you ever needed them. We parted quietly. No apologies, just understanding. Later that evening, I went to Raina's. Her apartment smelled like tomato sauce and incense. A half-eaten pizza sat on the coffee table next to her open laptop and a stack of flyers about digital harassment. She handed me her phone, a message from an unlisted number. "She's fragile. You're making it worse. Walk away while you still can." No name, no punctuation, the same tone as before. "I thought it might have been a troll," Raina said, "but then I traced the metadata." She clicked a few keys and pulled up a simple location map, Falls Grove, right near Eleanor's neighborhood. "I don't know what she's doing," Raina said, "but she's watching. Closely." I sat on the couch, absorbing the weight of it all. The way Eleanor removed people wasn't sudden. It was slow, like pruning. Just enough at a time that you didn't notice until you were the only branch left. "I need to see Lila," I said. The hospital room was quiet when I arrived. Pale blue walls, dim lighting, soft beeping in the background. Lila was awake, propped up with pillows, a crossword half-finished on her lap. "You look awful," she said, smiling faintly. "You collapsed at our party. I think I win that round." She chuckled, but her eyes were tired. I pulled a chair close. "Do you remember someone named Sophia?" Lila stiffened, ever so slightly. "Yeah," she said. "Why?" "I found an old photo of you two. You looked happy." She looked away. "We were." I waited. "She was my first real love," she said softly. "We met in college. Everything was right." "What happened?" She stared at her hands. "Mom found out, called Sophia's parents, said we were damaging each other, threatened to ruin her dad's business if they didn't pull her from school." My chest tightened. "She made me go to therapy," Lila continued. "Said I was emotionally imbalanced. Picked the therapist herself. Drove me. Sat in on sessions." She smiled bitterly. "One time, I cried, and she told me to stop being theatrical. Right there in the session." The words sat between us like broken glass. She told me love like that wasn't sustainable, that I needed to recalibrate. I didn't know what to say, so I squeezed her hand. When I got home that night, I pulled out an old box of keepsakes from the hallway closet. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just followed a gut feeling. At the bottom, beneath yearbooks and mismatched earrings, I found Lila's old leather-bound journal. The middle pages were torn out, but one entry caught my eye. "I feel like someone's watching me constantly. Mom knows things I haven't told her. She says it's intuition. I think she's reading my emails." I sat back, the journal resting on my lap. The threads were no longer threads. They were wires, tangled, deliberate, connected. I opened my laptop and renamed the folder I'd started. Eleanor Ridgway, Evidence Phase 1. As I closed the file, a new email pinged. Subject, Security Footage Request, Ready for Viewing. I stared at the screen. My hand hovered over the trackpad, trembling. This was no longer about suspicion. This was about proof. Some wars are fought in courtrooms. Mine started over pot roast and pecan pie. The air smelled like rosemary and something caramelized. A pot roast was resting on the stovetop, gravy thick and steaming. I had set the table the night before. 6 places, cloth napkins, mismatched glasses that I told myself gave the gathering charm. I'd made sweet tea, chilled it in mason jars. Raina brought a peach cobbler from her neighbor's recipe, still warm in the foil. Lila folded napkins. Her hands trembled slightly. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I do," I said, "because if I don't, she will again." One by one, the guests arrived like nothing was broken. Marcus with his quiet smile, Raina with a raised eyebrow, Nathan late bearing flowers. Then Eleanor, dressed like Grace itself in pale blue, a glass tray of lemon bars balanced in her hands. "You always host so beautifully, Mora," she said, brushing my cheek. Her voice dripped syrup. "I'm glad we're finding our way back to each other." I smiled and took the tray. "So am I." Lunch was pleasant, if you ignored the undercurrent. We ate, we nodded, we complimented the roast. Eleanor recounted a story about her bridge group. Raina smiled too much. Nathan barely touched his food. I waited until dessert was about to be served. Before we cut into anything, I said, rising slowly, there's something I'd like to share. Eleanor's fork froze mid-air. Lila looked down. Raina shifted subtle as her hand dipped into her purse. Her phone's camera was already recording. I walked over to the TV, plugged in the flash drive, and let the silence do the talking as the screen flickered to life. The footage was grainy but clear. A high corner angle of the kitchen at the vineyard. There was Eleanor, alone. She set 2 wine glasses on the counter, reached into her purse, pulled out a small bottle, uncapped, tilted, one drop, then another, stirred with a spoon she wiped clean. On screen, she checked her reflection in the microwave door and smiled. Then came the moment I entered. She turned, covered one glass with a napkin, handed it to me with a smile that even now made my skin crawl. The room had gone completely still. I clicked to the next image, a photo of the wine glass, now stored and labeled. Then, prescription bottles, all in her name from different pharmacies, alprazolam, diazepam, cycloprene, all filled in the past 3 months. Next, a written statement from Mr. Cletus, our neighbor, describing her washing something chemically suspicious down the storm drain the night of the party. Finally, a screenshot of the message Raina received. She's fragile. Walk away while you still can. I stepped back. Eleanor hadn't moved. This is absurd, she said finally, voice even. You're twisting everything. That was a supplement. You know I take tinctures. No, I interrupted. I know exactly what you take and how long you've been hiding it in vitamin bottles. She scoffed. You've always overreacted, Mora, always turning little things into trauma. I'm not reacting, I said. I'm revealing. Nathan shifted beside me, his jaw clenched. Lila sat frozen, fingers tight around her water glass. Then she spoke. Quiet, unsteady. Did you know I was pregnant when I drank that? The sentence hung in the air like a cracked bell. Eleanor blinked. Marcus turned sharply to Lila. You didn't tell me that. I was waiting, Lila whispered. We were going to wait until after the party. Eleanor didn't answer. You knew, Lila said again, didn't you? Still nothing. Raina's hand didn't shake as she tilted her phone slightly, still recording. My breathing felt like gravel. Eleanor finally stood. This is a witch hunt, she said, smoothing her blouse. I don't need to defend my care, my family. I did what I had to do. To protect us, I asked. To protect you from yourself, she snapped. From another failure you'd blame me for. From another mistake you'd ask me to clean up. I didn't ask you to do anything, I said, and I certainly didn't ask you to poison my party. You ungrateful little girl, she said coldly. I made you, and I can unmake you. I stepped closer. You already tried. Silence again, but this time it wasn't still. It vibrated with everything unspoken for years. Lila stood slowly. Marcus rose beside her, his hand on her back. Nathan looked away. Raina's screen went black. Eleanor's eyes darted between us. For the first time, I saw it. Not rage, not defiance, fear. That night, as I cleaned up the dishes in a quiet kitchen, the words she'd said clung to me. I made you. Maybe once. Maybe she shaped the version of me that stayed silent, that let people decide who deserved to sit at my table, that made peace out of chaos just to survive. But that version was gone, and I'd built this one myself. Eleanor didn't call. She didn't cry. She built a stage and tried to bury me in it. 3 days after the confrontation, the silence felt almost generous. Too generous. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Instead, it arrived in a browser tab. Raina was the one who found it. She stormed into my apartment with her laptop under her arm. No knock, no warning. You need to see this, she said, flipping the screen toward me. It was a Facebook page. Mora R. Raw, real, rebuilding. It used my name, my photo, my face from the engagement party, slightly filtered, But the captions, they weren't mine. He cheated, but I stayed. Who's the fool? Daughters like these. No wonder mothers break. There were memes too, poorly made, low contrast. One showed a broken wine glass with the words, "She shattered herself." Now she blames the hands that tried to hold her. I felt cold all over. "She made this," I whispered. Raina didn't argue. "I ran the IP, Falls Grove residential line," she said. "Same block as her." I leaned back, blinking hard. Nathan walked in from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "What's going on?" "Fake page, using my name," I said. He looked at the screen, frowning. "This is low, even for her." We didn't speak for a moment, just listened to the soft hum of the fan as it turned in slow circles overhead. The next day, Nathan got a call from one of his new clients, a creative agency out of Austin. They were set to begin a year-long contract. Big money, steady work. "They're pulling out," he told me over the phone. "What? Why?" "Someone sent them a tip, said I was unreliable, that I had a history of substance abuse and erratic behavior." My breath caught. "That lawsuit from 6 years ago," he added, "the one that was sealed. She brought it up." "She's trying to isolate you," I said. "She's trying to destroy me," he replied quietly. Later that evening, I opened my inbox. A grant agency I'd applied to months ago had replied, "Thank you for your submission. Due to the tone of your recent communication, we no longer feel aligned with your mission." I never sent them a follow-up. Raina helped trace the message. It came from an email address almost identical to mine. Just one letter changed. She showed me the message it had sent. Curt, aggressive, and signed with my name. "She's not even pretending to be subtle," I said. "She doesn't have to be," Raina replied. "She knows how much of the world believes in polite mothers and dramatic daughters." We sat in silence for a while. Then Raina said, "If she wants an audience, we'll give her one," I finished. That night, we uploaded a 10-minute documentary. No names, no faces, just my voice layered over dim footage, shots of the vineyard, the wine glass, the letter Lila wrote years ago, blurred screenshots of the texts Raina received. We called it, "When Family Hurts the Invisible War at Home." We didn't push it, didn't tag anyone, just shared it quietly with a soft caption. "This is for anyone who's ever been told to stay quiet." By noon the next day, it had 5,000 views. By evening, 50,000. Comments poured in. "That's my mom, too." I thought I was crazy. "You just named what I've been afraid to say for years." Some people cried. Some got angry. Some just said thank you. I didn't reply. I just read. Nathan came up behind me, placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did something good," he said. I nodded, not because I believed it yet, but because I wanted to. Around midnight, I checked the mailbox. There was only one envelope, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting before I opened it. 4 words. "You embarrassed this family." That was all. No apology, no denial. Just a warning wrapped in a wound. I sat at the kitchen table, letter in hand, and stared out into the quiet night. Then I lit a match, held the flame to the corner, and watched the paper curl into itself, slow and black. I didn't keep it. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. Sometimes, silence can be an apology, and sometimes it's just more control. This time, the silence was mine. Not every story ends with an apology. Some just end with distance and peace. The gallery smelled faintly of varnish and new drywall. The walls were matte white, simple, quiet. I didn't want the space to distract. The photographs needed room to speak. I named the exhibit Unspoken. 20 portraits, all black and white, each subject facing the camera directly, some smiling faintly, some blank, some with tears caught just before they fell, but all of them brave, survivors of invisible battles, people who had been told to sit down, hush up, smile prettier, people like me. I didn't include my own photo. I didn't need to. The night of the opening, Nathan stood beside me, his hand warm at the small of my back. He'd found new work by then, something steadier, less polished but honest. He looked more himself now, less like someone performing competence, more like someone living it. Raina flew in from Chicago just for the exhibit. She brought a bouquet of peonies and a USB drive with her latest podcast episode. "I called it The Poison in the Punch Bowl," she grinned. "It's raw, real, and, let's be honest, pretty damn well produced." It went viral within days. The comments were a mix of pain and gratitude. People wrote in, "This is my sister. This is my mom. This is me." And yet Eleanor said nothing. No rebuttal, no letter, no text pretending innocence, just silence. But this time, it didn't feel like restraint. It felt like irrelevance. A few weeks later, back in Virginia, the leaves had turned copper and gold. The nursery was half painted, one wall soft green, the others still blank. I wasn't in a rush. Some things didn't need to be finished to feel whole. I placed my old camera on the top shelf, not to record, not this time, just to remind myself where I'd been, what I'd survived. Lila came by every Thursday. She brought coffee and stories from the support group she now helped run at the local library. "There was a woman last week who said she thought she was just sensitive her whole life," Lila told me. "Turns out she was just being silenced." Marcus had spoken at the last session. According to Raina, he stood up in front of 20 strangers and said, "My wife isn't broken. She's rebuilding, and I'm learning how to be part of that, not in charge of it." Sometimes growth sounds like a confession. Sometimes it just sounds like love. That winter, a thin envelope arrived with no return address. I knew the handwriting. 4 neat sentences, scrawled in Eleanor's looping script. No sorry. No, I didn't mean to. Just an accusation about my loyalty, a line about how families should remain private, and one closing shot. "You turned your pain into theater. Congratulations on the applause." I held the letter over the sink, lit a match, and watched the words darken, curl, and vanish. I didn't keep it. I wasn't healing to make her feel better. I was healing to stop needing her at all. That night, I stood alone in the nursery. The crib was half assembled, a blanket from Raina folded neatly on the glider. Outside, the wind shook the last of the leaves from the branches. I rested my hand on my belly, felt the gentle nudge of a foot, a sign of life from someone not yet born, but already so deeply mine. "You'll never have to earn my love," I whispered. And I meant it, because control is loud, control is desperate. But peace? Peace is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just stays. Some stories don't need a dramatic finale, just a quiet room, a new beginning, and a promise whispered to someone not yet born. For me, healing didn't come from revenge. It came from choosing peace over permission and learning that boundaries can be a kind of love, too. In families, silence can either protect or imprison. When we dare to name what hurt us, we give others permission to do the same, and maybe even stop the cycle. Because love, when it's real, doesn't come with conditions. It listens. It lets go. If this story stirred something in you, I'd be honored to hear what it reminded you of. Sometimes the stories we tell help others find the words for their own.